Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we've got this whole stack of sources we're digging into, and they're all asking this big question, really. Where's the next wave of major growth? Where are the potential stock opportunities?
Exactly. And these sources, they kind of narrow it down pretty quickly to two huge areas, artificial intelligence and cryptocurrency.
Right, AI and crypto. And they don't just keep it high level. They get into specific companies they think could really, ride these waves.
Yeah, they name names.
And the scale they're hinting at, it's pretty wild. I mean, one source here, PwC, they're talking about AI adding something like $15.7 trillion to the global economy by 2030.
15.7 trillion. That's a big number. And then on the crypto side, they mentioned the market was already over $3 trillion back in June.
So yeah, definitely not small niches we're talking about here. Huge potential market.
Absolutely. Even capturing a small slice of that is significant.
Okay, and within these, the sources spotlight, two main companies, right? One is making the chips, the sort of foundational stuff for AI.
Yeah, the hardware.
And the other is like a major platform in the crypto world, an exchange.
A leading exchange, yeah. So our plan today is to really unpack what these sources are saying, pull out the key insights, and kind of figure out what it might mean for you listening.
It sounds good. Let's start with the AI part then. The sources jump right into the hardware that makes AI tick. And they highlight advanced micro devices, AMD.
Right, AMD. They're presented as, a really big player in chip making. And if you think about that huge $15 trillion AI prediction, well, the sources see a massive opportunity there for a company like AMD building the actual engines for AI.
Okay, but the sources also make this distinction, don't they, between how companies play in the AI space. They talk about AI training versus AI inferencing. Can you break that down? Like, where does the AMD fit in?
That's a great point. So AI training, simply put, is like feeding the AI model tons and tons of data to make it smart. That's the initial learning phase.
Okay.
And the sources kind of note that, Nvidia really grabbed a big chunk of that early market.
So AMD maybe wasn't first to the table for that specific training piece?
That seems to be the gist, yeah. But the sources really stress that AMD's big focus now is on AI inferencing.
Inferencing.
Yeah.
So that's like taking the trained AI and having it actually do something with new information.
Exactly. It's the AI making decisions, generating text, analyzing images, whatever its job is, but using new data in real time. It's the AI at work, basically.
Got it.
And this is where it gets interesting. The sources pull data from markets and markets suggesting this inferencing market. It's expected to explode, like from around $106 billion next year, 2025, up to $255 billion by 2030.
Whoa, okay. More than doubling in 5 years? Yeah, you can see why AMD might focus there. So how are they going after? What are the specifics mentioned?
Well, a big move was launching their first major data center chip for this, the MI300. That was late 2023.
Right.
And the sources point out that chip family apparently generated $5 billion in revenue just last year.
$5 billion from just one new product line. That's pretty significant. And their leadership sees an even bigger potential market down the road.
Yeah, the sources mention AMD management talking about a $500 billion total opportunity. That's the big picture they see as they keep launching new GPUs, these graphics processing units, specifically for inferencing.
Okay, so that's the strategy and the potential. But what about like actual proof? What signs do the sources point to that show AMD is actually gaining ground here?
Good question. They list a few things. First, their data center revenue jumped pretty sharply last quarter, up 57% compared to the year before.
Okay, that's solid growth.
And maybe more importantly, they mention a specific win. One of the top AI model developers is apparently using AMD's Instinct chips right now for their day-to-day inferencing work.
Getting a major AI company using your chips, that does sound like a strong signal. What else is on the horizon?
The sources also talk about the next generation chip, the Instinct MI400, which is expected in 2026. And a really big piece of news they cite is that OpenAI, the ChatGPT folks, they've announced plans to use this upcoming MI400 chip.
OpenAI. Wow, okay, that feels like a pretty big validation.
Yeah, the sources present that as a really powerful sign that AMD's tech is getting serious traction with the key players really shaping AI's future.
Interesting. Now, the sources also mention AMD's stock price, saying it pulled back a bit but started bouncing back, and they frame that dip as maybe an opportunity.
They do, yeah. It's sort of presented as, maybe a chance to get into this potential growth story. after things cooled off slightly.
And there was that interesting note about the stock advisor team, too. The sources talk about them discussing AMD, but then they specifically say AMD wasn't on their current list of, like, 10 best stocks to buy right now.
Yes, that detail's in there.
All right.
And it's right next to these examples of huge past winners from that same team. They mentioned putting $1,000 into Netflix back in 2004 would be worth over $650,000 now.
Wow.
And $1,000 in Nvidia from 2005 would be over $870,000.
So while it's not saying buy AMD now from that specific team, it definitely paints a picture of the potential scale if you do get into one of these big growth stories early, doesn't it?
For sure. It really highlights the kind of long-term returns they're thinking about when analyzing these high-growth areas.
Okay, so that covers AMD and the AI hardware angle from these sources. Let's switch lanes now to that second big market, cryptocurrency.
Right. And the company in the spotlight here is Coinbase Global.
Coinbase. And they frame it within that huge crypto market size we mentioned, over $3 trillion.
Yeah, but they add another layer. They cite data, I think, from Kraken, saying only about 7% of people globally actually use crypto right now.
Only 7%? Wow.
Yeah, so the implication in the sources is there's this massive runway for growth, just in terms of adoption.
And Coinbase fits in as like the main entry point for a lot of people, the exchange.
Pretty much. They're described as a leading crypto exchange, where you buy, sell, hold the assets. And the sources note they're holding over $300 billion worth of assets on their platform for customers.
Okay. And how's that playing out for their business recently?
Well, the sources highlight a big jump in revenue last year. Why? Because crypto trading volumes soared.
Ah, okay. More activity, more fees for Coinbase.
Exactly. And that performance apparently sent their stock price way up nearly 600% since 2022, according to these sources.
600%. But there's always a but with crypto, right?
Right.
The sources mention the volatility risk.
Oh, absolutely. They're very clear on that. The big risk for Coinbase is simple. When the crypto market tanks, people trade less. Trading volume dries up.
Right.
And since a lot of their revenue comes from those trading fees, their income takes a direct hit. Their fortunes are really tied to those crypto market cycles. It's inherently volatile.
So given that risk, what's Coinbase doing to maybe smooth things out or grow beyond just waiting for the next retail trading boom?
Yeah.
What strategies do the sources mention?
A key strategy they outline is going after institutional investors much harder. Think big financial firms, hedge funds, maybe corporations.
Why them specifically?
Well, they usually trade in much bigger amounts than individuals. So attracting them could mean larger, maybe more consistent revenue streams compared to just relying on, lots of small retail trades.
Makes sense. And how are they trying to attract these big players, offering different products?
Yeah, stuff like crypto options, stablecoins, basically more sophisticated financial products. Plus, just beefing up their trading systems, their infrastructure to handle the kind of speed and reliability these big institutions demand.
Okay. And the sources also flagged some external signs, didn't they? Things happening outside Coinbase that they see as positive for crypto long term.
They did. Two main ones stood out. First, a report actually from Coinbase itself saying that something like 60% of Fortune 500 execs are working on blockchain projects.
60%. So big companies are seriously looking at the underlying tech.
That's the signal they're highlighting, yeah, that major corporations are engaging with this technology. The other signal mentioned was President Donald Trump's recent executive order.
Right, the one about looking into a strategic Bitcoin reserve for the U.S. government.
Exactly. The sources present these two things, corporate interest and potential government-level exploration, as, strong indicators pointing towards rising demand and legitimacy for crypto over the long haul.
Okay, so those are seen as potentially bullish signs for the whole crypto space, which could obviously benefit Coinbase.
Correct. That's how they're framed within these sources, and it ties into Coinbase's bigger vision.
Which isn't just about trading Bitcoin.
No. The sources mention their stated mission is broader, to become a major financial services platform, using crypto as the foundation, but expanding from there.
So, putting it all together, the sources seem to present Coinbase stock as kind of a primary way to potentially get exposure to this whole booming, if volatile, crypto market.
That seems to be the takeaway, yeah. Based on that mix of market potential, the current low adoption, their strategic moves towards institutions, and those external signals they pointed out.
Okay, let's try and synthesize this a bit. We've looked at how these sources analyze AMD and AI chips and Coinbase and crypto. Are there common threads in how they identify these potential opportunities in such high-growth areas?
Yeah, I think there's a pattern. First, they pinpoint a massive trend,
Sure.
right? Something with huge projected growth like the AI market size or the potential for crypto adoption to increase. They need that big picture.
Okay, find the wave first.
Exactly. Then they zero in on a specific company that seems really well positioned within that wave. Not just any company, but one they see as having a strong strategic position to actually benefit from that growth.
Like AMD with its focus on inferencing chips, or Coinbase as a leading exchange platform.
Precisely. And then they drill down into the specifics for that company. What's their actual strategy? What products are driving growth? What do recent results look like?
Right, like the MI300 revenue for AMD or the institutional push for Coinbase. They need concrete evidence.
Exactly. Concrete actions, specific wins like the OpenAI deal for AMD, stuff that shows the strategy is actually working or gaining traction. And they often link it back to those broader external signals, too.
Like the Fortune 500 blockchain interest or the government looking at Bitcoin reserves you mentioned.
Yeah, those signals act almost like validation for the bigger trend they're betting on. But they also, importantly, acknowledge the risks involved, like the market volatility for Coinbase. It's not just cheerleading.
So thinking about this for you, the listener, when you hear this breakdown, market size, company strategy, specific results, external signals, what stands out to you, does it change how you might think about evaluating a potential growth stock or a big trend?
It's about seeing those different layers, isn't it? The huge macro trend, this specific company's micro strategy, and those validating points, and how they all kind of connect or don't connect sometimes.
Well, we've certainly taken a deep dive today into the analysis provided by this particular set of sources, looking at the opportunities and the specifics they laid out for AI and AMD and for crypto and Coinbase.
Yeah, it's one specific viewpoint based on this material showing one methodology for analyzing these really dynamic, fast-moving markets.
So maybe a final thought to leave you with, building on what we've discussed. If you were to use a similar framework looking at market size, adoption potential, company strategy, concrete results, external signals, how might you start evaluating the next big thing that catches your interest? What kind of signals or data points would you look for first?